Hello, my name is Thomas Felix Creighton, and in this video I'm talking about Francis Extance Creighton. We are indeed related, it's my great-grandfather. As I journey across the internet, I keep seeing this quote that in 3 generations you'll be forgotten. And I think this is supposed to give, some kind of perspective, the worries you have now will be all forgotten about, and those who criticize you will be forgotten about, and it's all, focus on the present. But it got me thinking, how much do I know about my great-grandfather? Of course, I never met him. There are some tangible ways in which we're connected. I'm right now wearing the cufflinks that he used to wear, and indeed I wore them for my wedding. And indeed, I have this, which was given to me as a child. It belonged to him. I see the F.E. Creighton right there, and this is of course his recorder, a vital piece of equipment when it was identified that he was musically gifted. In fact, he moved from this to the piano in later life, and he would play the piano at local children's schools as he was involved in education. I was given this and I loved it. It's interesting that the musical gift did not pass immediately to his son. Sometimes it skips a generation. My grandfather was given a recorder and thought this is a fantastic thing for sword fights, and so broke it the first time it was given to him, and he didn't really want to admit that. So he went to the class, and it was a group class, and my grandfather kind of mimed the finger movements and managed to get away with it for a fairly long time until he was asked to do a solo, when of course all was revealed. My father had an ear for music, but it was me. It skipped 2 generations of me who was really interested in playing a musical instrument. As I say, I moved on to the flute. My great-grandfather moved on to the piano. I have something else from him here, which is his favourite book. I believe his favourite writer was Rudyard Kipling, and this is Plain Tales from the Hills, in which he has, in several of his books he had copious notes. Some of those notes have long since fallen away, they've disintegrated. So for example, he had notes on the poem Gunga Din, talking about the real life Indian who inspired it. And here, on the 3 Musketeers, and when the war began, we chased the bold Afghan, and we made the blooming Ghazi for to flee. My great-grandfather, like Kipling, lived in British India, and so he must have seen something of that society reflected here. My great-grandfather went up to the northwest frontier, and we have some wonderful photos, and that is thanks to the lady he married, born Dorothy Duell. She went to university, very unusual in those days. She came from a good, respectable family down on the south coast of England, and when it came time for her to see professional life in India, my forebear, Frank, as he was generally known, Frank Extance Creighton, was told to look after her, and he looked after her so well, they got married. My grandfather was born in Ambala. They then moved on to Hong Kong. Of course, I spent some time in China, 6 years, and for 6 years I lived in the Chinese city that's kind of opposite Hong Kong, above it. So I could spend the weekend in Hong Kong. And it's wonderful to see the photos of my great-grandfather there, as the pictures of him in a full suit at the beach really makes my life seem so normal and explicable. I love it. As I say, his wife was so interested in photography. We have quite a bit. Later, they moved back to British India and lived for some time at a place called Garial. And they must have had some wonderful, wonderful memories there, because later on in life, when they had a house in the UK, they would name the house Garial after the place in which they had been so happy. So we do have some connections. He spent his life working in education. So with the British Army, he worked in, I believe, a precursor to the Army Education Corps. So he worked in education, his wife worked in education, and my education as a teenager was disrupted. I left school at 14, full-time school, left education altogether at 16, and returned as a mature student. So one of my proudest accomplishments in life is that I was, after doing quite a few courses, I was teaching at the University of Bradford here in the UK as a full-time lecturer in my 20s. So I do feel a bit of connection through the music, through the work in education, and of course through the travel, but perhaps most of all through the people. He influenced people who influenced me. He had his 3 boys, my grandfather, who joined the British Army as a boy soldier. He looked very mature for his age as a teenager when the war was going on, so he joined as a boy soldier, helped waterproof the D-Day landing ships, and would then have a good career in the British Army, finishing as a major. His brother, of course, would be in the SAS, and his younger brother would be an army translator. So, not surprising, as a child growing up, I thought that the British Army was essentially the Creighton employment scheme. And of course, he influenced my father, who has influenced me. So I would say that I am very much connected to my great grandfather, and I hope you enjoyed this video.